to come out. So my name is Jill Myers, and I'm so honored to be hosting this series for the Red Door Films. A little bit about me. I'm a private pilot, Air Force veteran, aerospace engineer, professional speaker, and advocate for women in STEM careers, especially women in aviation and aerospace. I've been connected to Hillary and Mattia Carell from the Red Door Film since 2016. The top two photos are from an event that I helped plan and emceed in Carlsbad, California, to introduce a whole lot of people to these amazing women, the Women Air Force Service pilots. The photo on the left is me with Mattia, who really is the heart of this entire effort. If you want to hear Mattia's story about how she got interested in the WASP when she found out her mother was a plane spotter in World War II, please go to the Fly Girls Facebook page and you can watch the video from when I interviewed Mattia, Hillary, and Molly Merriman 3 weeks ago, I believe it was. But look at the Facebook page on the videos and you'll see it saved off. And the photo on the right is of me and B. Haydu, one of the amazing WASP who sadly recently did pass. So now let me introduce Hillary Prentice from the Red Door Films. Hillary has been working with Mattia since 2015 and recently collaborated with her on both the Emmy-nominated HBO film The Tale and on Fabrice Chabert's film Safety. Hillary is also producing Mattia's new feature film called The Boy on the Bus. She's working also with Emmy-winning writer Chuck Sklar, producing his first feature film, Caught Stealing, with Chris Rock. Hillary is producing this Coming Home documentary, as well as their dramatic television series called Fly Girls. And our very special guest today is Ms. Kim Kissh. Kim is a graduate of Embry Riddle Aeronautical University, earning her degree in Aeronautical Science with a minor in Aviation Safety. She currently works in corporate or business aviation, as we also call it, flying an amazingly sexy aircraft, if you don't mind me saying so, the Gulfstream G550, it's a business jet. Kim was selected as one of NBAA's top 40 under 40 in 2020. NBAA is the premier organization called National Business Aviation Association. And Kim is also very active with another organization called Women in Corporate Aviation, which we're going to talk about a little later. So Kim, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. And I'm glad you also agree. I call this airplane beautiful all the time and people think I'm crazy.
It is. It's super cool. So before we get to chatting with Kim directly, I'd like to ask Hillary to tell a little bit about how you got connected with Mattia in the beginning and your passion for the WASP and what brought you to the point today of producing the Coming Home documentary.
Yeah, well, I had a colleague who was in theater and we wanted to produce a play that Mattia had written, actually all based on the WASP themselves, their words, talking about their experiences. And I just couldn't believe that there were women pilots in World War II. I was a history major. I was just floored. And I was kind of angry, actually, to be honest with you. And so when I met her, I said, God, I want to do this play in an airport hangar. This would be really cool, but this has got to be a movie. And she's like, I know, I've been trying and no one's interested. I'm like, what? What do you mean no one's interested? I'm seeing, Band of Brothers. That was one of my favorite TV series. So, we set out to get to work. And luckily, she invited me on as her producer. And we started working on the TV series. And then we were interviewing these incredible women for the TV series to inspire actresses and writers and get exactly how they talk, because they talk, they use different vocabulary words and they've got all these great ways. Plus, it's just them. I mean, they're just these treasures. And after a couple of years of that filming and also producing events and bringing the public together, making people aware, doing things like we did with Jill and, at Carlsbad, which is really just an incredible event. I'm still so grateful to the Women in Aviation San Diego chapter and everybody involved in that. One of the best moments that makes me cry, but we had one of our main characters, Beverly Biesmeyer, when we interviewed her, she said she would love to fly again, and her bucket list was to fly in an AT-6. That was all of their, many of them, their favorite plane, the AT-6, I guess because it had quite a kick. So wouldn't you know it, some incredible people got an AT-6 there, and we got Beverly in the AT-6 flying, and it took about an hour to get her in, but we got her in. We had this team of women all in uniform. I mean, it's just incredible, all helping her get in this plane. And then she flew, and an Air Force pilot flew back overnight to get that plane there. He wanted to fly with her. He heard it was for a WASP. So that was just incredible. So getting all of these great stories and footage together, we decided, you know what, there's never been a feature-length documentary. This is definitely worthy of a documentary. Through the WASP, we can also look at women in aviation, the early women of aviation, women of all races that have been involved in aviation in this country that people do not know about. And that is what, became Coming Home, Fight for a Legacy. And that's what we're fundraising for finishing funds. And the documentary will be part of a educational mentorship and outreach program with Kent State University, which probably talk about a little bit later on in the program.
Thanks, Hillary.
That
event we could talk about all day, but I just want to point out my favorite moment. Well, first of all, when Mattia called me one day and said, "Do you think you can get us a T6 for this thing?" And we did. But my favorite moments, I don't know if you've heard this story, Kim, but when they landed and Mattia and I walked over and we're greeting them and saying hi to the pilot, the primary pilot. I don't know if you remember, Hillary, but he actually stood up and looked at the crowd and he basically yelled out, "She took over the controls and did a flippin' barrel roll." And she was 97 years old and wheelchair bound at the time. So, that's a testament, I think, to the personalities of these women. And it's really what inspired us to do this series and continue our mode of talking to current day pilots, if you will, and talking more about how the legacy has impacted them and everything. So, Kim, what I'd like you to start with is the same question we ask everyone, which is, what is the initial spark that got you interested in aviation in the first place when you were younger?
Absolutely. So I always like to say I was absolutely bit by the bug, but it took a while for me to get there. My dad's a pilot, and usually everyone goes, "Oh, okay, we get it." But he actually had a share in a Cherokee 6 growing up through one of the flying clubs. So we would always go on these joint family vacations, and everyone else would drive and we would fly. And I was about 8 years old, so I didn't really comprehend it yet. And here I am thinking that we are the weird family. We're not like anyone else. We don't drive. We leave later. We get there first. I'm like, this thing's loud. It's vibrating. What is this? My brother's in the front. I'm in the back. I had no idea what an absolute privilege it was to be able to do these things. And I just thought we were the weird family because of it. So fast forward a little bit, I'm now 15 and my dad's a little bit of a history nerd. So we enjoyed the History Channel and we're watching a World War II special. And Hillary, just like you, I've seen all these World War II specials and you learn about how important aviation is and how crucial it was to that war. And yet you never really learn about the WASPs. So we're watching this special about World War II and the dogfighting and aviation in general. And I said to him, wow, I really think aviation's kind of cool. He said, well, I'm a flight instructor. I can teach you how to fly. And as a 15-year-old stubborn teenager, I said, absolutely not. That is the weirdest thing. No way. And I think he knew my competitive side a bit. And he said, well, that's okay, because by the time you ever become a pilot, I'll be anointed Pope. So I think he knew exactly what he was doing to spark that competitiveness in me. But the next week we went up in an airplane and that's when I was bit by the bug. I was completely sold and I was flabbergasted that people get paid to do this. It just felt like fun.
That's incredible. Sorry. Little disruption. So you went on to Embry Riddle Aeronautical University. Can you tell folks who may not know about Riddle what Riddle's about and what it's like?
Sure. So Embry Riddle, just like any other four-year university, is a college. It's a private university. So I went down, and like you said earlier, my major was Aeronautical Science, which is a fancy term for pilot. And I chose my minor as Aviation Safety. Um, and it was a blast. I mean, it was sort of like a normal college. I went to class, I made friends, I was in a sorority and different clubs and things like that. But the only addition was I would wake up at 4:30 in the morning, go fly at 6, land at 8:30, go to class at 9, eat breakfast, go back, and then do it all over again. So it's a nice balance between eat, sleep, breathe aviation and also having that college lifestyle.
And there's two campuses, right? You went to the main campus in Daytona Beach, Florida.
Correct. And then there's also Prescott, Arizona. And they also have Worldwide, which is, anyone could do. It's their online university.
Yeah, I did their graduate program for a bit through Worldwide. I started in classes in person because, Embry Riddle has campuses in a lot of cities where there's a lot of aviation. I was in Seattle with Boeing at the time. But yeah, it's a really outstanding school for anyone out looking for college options for anything related to aviation. They have an aerospace engineering program as well now. So
a really good one too.
Yeah.
And Kim, so when you were thinking about fighting and seeing all these flying and seeing these dog fights on this World War II documentary, when did you find out about the WASP? When did you finally learn about them?
It wasn't until college. So like I said, I was 15 when I realized I wanted to fly. And it actually wasn't until my first Women in Aviation conference in 2014 wow. And 2015. Yeah. And I actually went to one of their sessions where 3 of them were speaking, and just the emotion I had, I felt so much pride to be a pilot and to carry on their legacy that you guys are doing such a great job of preserving and fighting for. So it was so special. And from then on, I was just kind of hooked to hear more of their stories.
Yeah, I think they've spoken at every conference at least since then. The challenge, of course, is that, there's not a lot left. Sadly, those that are in their, upper 90s or even in their early 100s. There's a WASP in San Diego named Jean Landis, who's still alive. She just turned 103. And I met her once when I was chapter president of WAI there. They're just amazing, amazing women. So Kim, as you know, I do a lot of mentoring, and whenever young folks come to me and they only talk about wanting to be an airline pilot, and a lot of times, the first thing I ask them is why have you picked airline pilot? There's so many different ways to fly, and as you said, get paid. And a lot of people just don't know there are other options. So what I would love you to do, because I think, as you know, business/corporate aviation is the bomb. So if you can talk about, what corporate, for people that don't know, what really defines corporate aviation and sort of a day in the life. I know there's no typical day for corporate pilots. It's one of the fun things about it. But if you could talk about what it's like, what an average day, if there is one for you, is like, or how really do your days differ, I think it would be great education for folks listening who are thinking about aviation careers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I completely agree. And I was one of those people, I went to Embry Riddle, and, nothing against the university, but they do such a great job of setting you up for your ideal airline career. So I went in saying, man, Captain Kissh of Southwest will sound really great one day. And it wasn't until I had an airline internship, and I always say it was the best thing I did and the worst thing I did. It was the best thing I did because I learned so much, and especially from an incredible company, but it was the worst thing I did because it really crushed my dream of becoming an airline pilot. I had to see what it was like to realize it wasn't what I wanted. So like you said, my typical day is never really a typical day. And for me, that's what I love. I need to be challenged. I want to be kept on my toes. And the twist of business aviation is that you have to do it while providing your passengers the best experience to the highest caliber, to whatever, to fulfill their hopes and dreams to every extent. And whether that's charter or whether it's something like me for a Part 91 flight department where I know all of my passengers. And that's, it's fun to try to continuously impress them and, kind of be in their head a little bit and put out their favorite snacks and drinks and things like that. But as far as a day-to-day, I would say the only thing that's pretty consistent is your planning. So a couple days out, and this is also unlike an airline pilot, a couple days out, I'm thinking about filing the flight plans, looking at airport NOTAM. So that any runway closures, taxiway closures, anything that could ruin our flight to some extent. And then also on business aviation, we're constantly thinking about food for the pilots and the passengers. And, things like
like
that.
A producer.
Yeah, constantly.
You gotta take care of the crew and the cast.
Yeah, there's all these moving parts. And, a flight department like mine, we actually don't fly with any flight attendants. So it's our responsibility to make sure that the catering is ordered and it's on board, arrives on time, and all of that fun stuff as well. And then day of the flight, it's really just a bunch of monitoring of, is plan A going smoothly? If not, let's adjust to plan B. And if not, let's go to plan C. And worst case, we'll make a plan D. You're just continually monitoring everything that's going on around you. And for me, that's what's fun. It's always challenging. And sometimes your mission changes halfway through the flight. So you never really know what's going to happen, but, it's really fulfilling, I would say, because you could have one goal in mind, it changes, and you still want to be the best to continue that or to conclude that second goal.
That's really great. And can you talk about the Gulfstream 550 a bit for folks who are not familiar? Just describe the aircraft, how many people and a little bit about it.
So it's we hold 14 passengers, which may sound small, but think about a first class seat, but 14 of them. And actually in the back, we have a couch, which we can turn into a jet bed for passengers if we have longer flights. We have 2 bathrooms, including a crew rest area. So if we go international, we'll take 3 pilots and rotate. That way we all have sufficient rest all of the time. And we have a gorgeous galley area too, where, we keep all of our plates and snacks and 2 coolers, an oven, a microwave. This jet has it all. And I can stand up fully in it and stretch out.
Wow, amazing.
You can't in some of those, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And Kim, does it floor people if they show up? I mean, I would imagine that they know that who their pilot is, that many people would know their pilot, but maybe some people are joining on or, haven't been involved in the planning for their corporation. And so has anyone ever been surprised to see, you as the pilot? I mean, you're not exactly the typical older kind of strapping, man that we probably all think of when you hear the word pilot.
Yeah. So in this job in the beginning, it was really interesting introducing myself to all the executives, but they were really receptive and really welcoming. But yeah, absolutely. In the past, I worked for a charter company and I would get, so what did you do before this? Or, you hear these little comments of how old are you? And do you know your parents? Yeah. Do your parents know you're here? You just, most of the time you just smile and nod it off and know that, you'll get them safely to where they want to go, and that's your only responsibility.
So speaking of safety, Kim, we mentioned that you studied that as well in college, and I remember that you were the director of safety also at the last. You mentioned the charter company. Can you talk a bit about why you developed that passion for aviation safety, and what does a director of safety do? Because I know you did it in addition to flying for them actively also.
Yeah, absolutely. So really it kind of developed in college, because you sit down with guidance counselors and they ask you what classes you want to take. And I just took one safety class, pretty much just fill the elective category. And after taking the class, and then that was also coinciding with my internship that was coming up, which was an aviation safety internship with Southwest Airlines. And that's when I really found that, knock on wood, God forbid I do lose my medical under any circumstance, that I would want to stay in aviation, and aviation safety is a place that I could call home for my career. So that really was the driving force behind it. But then I realized it's really fun and interesting. And when you think of safety, you think, all right, well, I'm a safe pilot. I assess my risks and I determine whether it's safe for the flight to go or not go. But there's a lot more involved. It's very data driven and number driven. You're constantly analyzing the flight department to its fullest and seeing what changes do you have to make. Is this a procedure change? Is this more pilot training. So that's where I feel like I get to really execute my creative side, because it's problem solving at the end of the day. And a lot of people don't realize that. And then as director of safety, I had the absolute pleasure of writing our SMS manual, which is our safety management system manual. So, but that was also great. You know, I get to include a lot of charts and graphs and colors. So I was happy with it.
That's great. For those of you just joining us, I am very happily speaking with Hillary Prentice from the Red Door Films, and Kim Kissh, a corporate pilot and complete phenom in her own right. I want to also say that for those of you on the Facebook Live, if you have questions for any of us, please put them in the comments under the Facebook post of the live feed, and we will get to them hopefully before we end this little session. I do want to say hello and give a shout out to Hilda, who just put a hello to us. I think she's been on every one of these so far. So thank you.
We love you, Hilda.
Really appreciate that so much. So Hillary, you know, speaking of Facebook and social media, you know, Fly Girls and the Red Door Films has done things on social media that still completely blow my mind. Can you talk about can you talk a little bit about that and why you think it's been so successful and has really turned into a complete movement at this point?
Yeah, you know, I think when we first started our channel in 2015, it was to build awareness. You know, we knew that this was going to be a grassroots campaign. You know, as I mentioned, Mattia and I were like, we're going to get this story out there. We're going to get it done. And we're going to show the networks that they've got to have this TV show or, you know, now what's become our documentary. And so to do that, we have to show them that we have an audience. And our audience, I'm so pleased to say, is pretty much 50-50 male, female. That was the thing that really surprised me, and in a good way. Also, we have people of all walks of life who follow us, all political viewpoints. You know, this story is just something that captures the imagination of so many people. And I love how it challenges what our impressions or what the archetype of a woman in the 40s was. You see these women in their uniforms together in groups. That's another point Mattia loves to make, which is so true, which is that we as women don't grow up with shots of groups of women, unless now luckily we have the WNBA and we have soccer and we have all these, you know, wonderful sports teams and things, which really began when I came up, you know, in 1979. That was Title IX, and I was born in 1979. And actually my birthday is coming up. And so I'm having a whole solar return. But you know, to see what's happened in women athletics is just incredible. When I started playing sports, I was playing with the boys. I was the only girl on the boys team. You know, and I was constantly having to shatter expectations. And I think that's what, you know, unfortunately, women and other underrepresented groups, whether we like it or not, we have to shatter expectations because we're not on billboards, we're not in magazines, we're not in the books. The WASP, I mean, they developed these aircraft. They flew the B-29, which ended the war. They helped train our pilots so they could do things like dogfighting. There was a woman pilot in the air who was shot at by the Japanese at Pearl Harbor. You never see her, you know, in Pearl Harbor in that movie, you know, was Cornelia Forth there? No, you know, we're just left out of the narrative. So I think that when we started putting this out there, this material, people were just like hungry for it. And because of that, we've committed to the education and outreach and mentorship. And Jill, if you don't mind, I'll segue into our partnership with Kent State University, which we're so excited about. Before we brought Molly Merriman, Dr. Molly Merriman at Kent State, who is our historic research producer, and her book, Clipped Wings, The Rise and Fall of the WASP, is one of the books that we've optioned, one of the books that we're basing the documentary on. we had said our goal is to make this documentary free for schools and museums all across the country. We brought her in as a producer, and now our dream is a reality. We have a program called Pathways to Flight, which we are currently seeking corporate sponsors for. And that is an education program. We will be working with the teaching college at Kent State University to develop lesson plans. And they have a track record of this, working with Ohio schools. And we'll roll it out to Ohio schools using the documentary, and outtakes and scenes and things that don't make it into the final documentary. All of this will be supplemental material to be used with the lesson plans. So that's the education. But then there's the mentorship, Dare Mighty Things. That's actually a campaign by the School of Aeronautics and Engineering at Kent State. So we've jumped on to Dare Mighty Things, this interview series, which will hopefully become a podcast series too for all our watchers. We also are now going to be part of a program called SkyHack, which is a design and engineering program. And this is our first announcement. So if you're here watching and listening right now, you get to hear this first. But we are sponsoring one of the competition streams this November. And if you would like to be a part of this, this is really, really cool. Anybody listening, anybody who works at any kind of aviation engineering corporation, if you're listening, contact me. But we will be sponsoring a competition stream for a WASP action figure, or could be an app with WASP action figures, you know, and a whole storyline, like a video game kind of scenario. If it's an action figure, we would love to have it be, you know, interactive. So the WASP in the aircraft, you know, there'd be different settings and things like that. It's going to be really, really cool. So we're so excited, and we will be going to Kent State, giving our presentation, hopefully getting a student design team excited to jump on, and then we will be giving them an award. And we've got a buyer. So Kent State students, if you're listening, Jill has promised to buy several of these WASP action figures. So
I will. I promise I will.
But we're working with J.R. Campbell. I've got to give a shout out to him. So we'll be giving more information about this on our social media channels, but we're really excited about this.
That's really great. Yeah, the SkyHack thing is news to me today as well, everyone, and it's really, really exciting. So I'm gonna do a little off-topic thing here for a second, or off script, I should say. So Hilda wrote us back and said that she's been listening to share this information with her 9-year-old daughter, which is so amazing. So that her daughter's passionate about aviation and wants to become a pilot. So Kim and I have both mentioned so far today another organization called Women in Aviation International. I just want to point out to Hilda and anyone else listening that Women in Aviation International, which is WAI.org, has an annual event this year. It's on September 25th called Girls in Aviation Day. It's for girls ages 8 to 17, and there are events being hosted all over the world on or near September 25th. So go to WA.org, look for Girls in Aviation Day, and maybe, Hilda, there's a chapter near you that's doing an event for your daughter. I hope there is. I don't know where you live. So
thank you, Jill, for bringing that up, because actually, as you remember, when we were planning this series, it had to be in September. I wanted it to lead up to Girls in Aviation Day or Women in Aviation Day, and we needed you before Women in Aviation Day because you're going to be busy on that day.
Yeah, I have something special going on, actually. I won't distract this conversation though. But you know, there's a lot of organizations providing support out there. Oh, and I forgot the one thing I have to make sure to mention before we get back to Kim. So behind all three of us, I'm going to move my head, is a photo of Avenger Field hangar. So Avenger Field is the place in Sweetwater, Texas, where all of the WASP did their initial training. Sometimes they went off to other bases for specific aircraft training after they did their basic work. But if you have the opportunity to go to Sweetwater, Texas, you can go to Avenger Field, and also there's a WASP museum there, and it's an outstanding experience. So there's a lot of amazing nonprofit organizations doing amazing things to support not only women in aviation and aerospace, which is my technical field, who are already in the industry or want to get into the industry, but a lot of outreach to the next generation. So Kim has been a member, of course, of Women in Aviation International. We pretty much only see each other now at conferences. But she's also been a member of Women in Corporate Aviation for 5 years now, and has been part of their leadership team for 4 of those 5 years. So Kim, I'd love you to chat about WCA, what they do, and how they tie to outreach and education, and what they can do for folks interested in business / general / corporate aviation.
Absolutely. I love telling a little bit of the history of women in corporate aviation, because I think it helps really encompass the camaraderie, especially between women in aviation, but camaraderie is a huge aspect in aviation in general. So like, as you mentioned, there's the Women in Aviation conferences, and it was 1993, and there was a bunch of women sitting in the room, and one said, oh, I'm in corporate and I don't know what shoes to wear. And then all of a sudden they started talking, oh, I don't know what shoes to wear either, or what do you wear? And they really realized that they needed a subgroup to really be able to bring together all of these women who were in this sub part of the industry. So that's, in a nutshell, how Women in Corporate Aviation started. And I've had the pleasure for 5 years now to be a member and also help out in different aspects, whether it's social media and now membership coordination. So, and then also the whole point of Women in Corporate Aviation is it's a 501c3 nonprofit, and our main focuses are really mentorship, scholarships, networking, and different opportunities for anyone in corporate aviation. And I always stress that this organization really isn't just for one type of corporate pilot. It's flight attendants, mechanics, sales and business, even aircraft interior designers. You know, there's all of these jobs out here within corporate aviation that no one really knows about. And it's all about the advocacy and education to let people know that this is available if that's what you want to do. But through that, we build a community, and we're able to educate and advocate for people in the industry, and also people who would like to be in the industry.
That's really great. So I'm going to follow right up on that, Kim. Someone wrote in and said, it's clear that there's a generation of young women interested in aviation. What would you say to those dreaming of becoming a pilot? What would your advice be?
Oh my gosh, just do it. Go for it. You know, the sky's not the limit. There's footprints on the moon, you know. It seems like a big jump, but I promise you that there are these organizations and there's people who will support you. And I can't deny it. There will be people who say that you can't, or you should, or how could you have a family in this industry? And there are those naysayers, but I always say that little bit of doubt is what motivates you, because you want to prove them wrong, and you don't want to prove them wrong for them, but you want to do it for you. So, go out there and have fun with it, enjoy the ride, and don't be afraid to ask questions and reach out to people for help.
Yeah, that's a really, really good advice. I also want to add on to what Kim said, and we've mentioned it a bit so far today, but there are so many careers in corporate aviation, and in, you know, really any aspect of aviation. Aircraft dispatcher, one of my favorites that most people have never heard of. You know, aviation maintenance right now, women are only 2.5% of all the aircraft mechanics, which is a ridiculously low number. Oh, by the way, Myra said fly better. So yes, we do try to do that. A very good friend of mine is an aviation attorney, the only one in the entire state of New Mexico, because a lot of people are like, really, aviation law, like that's a thing? You know, there's so many different fields. So what I encourage people to do, and I know Kim does as well, is no matter what your field of interest is, there might be an aviation related way to support our industry and still do that. There's so much more to do in addition to being the pilot, which of course is, you know, one of the coolest things though is flying the plane, as Kim will tell you. A couple of folks, by the way, have commented about Girls in Aviation Day events in their area, so that's good to hear. If you have questions, again, please put them in the chat. We have about 8 minutes left here to chat with Hillary Prentice from the Red Door Films and the amazing Kim Kissh, corporate pilot. let me think what else we can chat about.
And Jill, if I could add one other thing about,
Please.
getting involved or learning more about it. So Women in Corporate Aviation is actually very soon on Thursdays hosting a live Zoom call. So very similar to what we're doing now, but it's a Zoom. So you can feel free to ask questions, and myself and another aviator will be on there talking, and she's actually an aviation counselor. So she preps people for interviews and their whole entire career. So we will together be speaking with Women in Corporate Aviation. All of the information is on the website, which is wca-intl.org, or our Instagram, Women in Corp Aviation. And I know you guys will be able to put that out there on social media and wherever.
Yeah, thanks, Kim. Yeah, we'll put that in the chat for everybody. And we can also do a post for you guys too, if you want to send me some, for you gals, I should say. I have one of my favorite teachers. She was my freshman year TA, and I actually just had lunch with her in Boston. And I always say guys, and she actually is the one who introduced me to her story. Not history, her story, and introduced a lot of concepts actually, which I got a great education at Montpelier High School in Vermont. So shout out to Carol Watson, but she always says, guys, don't say guys. I can't help it, Carol. I'm sorry. I'm working on it, correcting myself. Anyway.
Well, I'm from New York, so I would rather you say you guys than y'all, but that's my opinion.
Right. I know. Well, anyway, we would love to do a post for you, and we can post the link and let people know how to join. And Kim, I would love to get to know more. We'll have to talk offline, because I'm sure your organization would be a great partnership organization with us in terms of mentorship.
Yeah,
and outreach.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what's really interesting too is people think, it's when you're young and you're deciding, what do I want to be when I grow up? But aviation in general is one of those really rare industries that you could have 20 years in a different career and wake up one day and say, I want to be a pilot, or I want to be a flight attendant, and you can do those. There's those avenues to take you there. And that's a big shout out I want to give to Women in Corporate Aviation. The scholarships aren't just for students in college. Some of them are, but there's plenty that even if you've flown and you stop to raise children, or even just take a hiatus, those scholarships really help you get you back on track without breaking the bank again.
So Kim, Valerie just put a question, hilarious timing, on Facebook that says, do you get many retired female airline pilots, or is 65 considered too old for companies in corporate aviation? And for those listening, airlines, I believe, still have a cutoff where there's a mandatory retirement at 65. It used to be 60 and they've raised it. So Kim, I don't believe there's any age limit on corporate aviation. Is that true?
No, the only restriction is international travel. I believe the age is 70 though. But what's great about corporate is that you'll find a lot of these small commuter corporate companies or charter companies where you can fly an airplane like a PC-12, which is a single engine turboprop. And that's a job that, you can be home every night, or home, almost every other night. And, and that's possible too, if if you don't want to be too far away from home or have that airline schedule. And those jobs exist, and they're out there, and they're a little bit more popular than people would think.
Yeah, and just one more comment too. There's, as we've said earlier, corporate aviation is one slice of the aviation pilot world, but within corporate aviation, there's an additional layer of types of flying. Kim flies, as she said, an aircraft that holds a jet that holds 14 passengers. I would say mostly executive flying. I know someone who flies scientists back and forth to Alaska in much smaller planes. So there's a lot of ways to be a corporate pilot, a lot of different types of flying, different distances, different size aircraft. And as Kim said, a lot of corporate pilots do have the ability, depending on what they're doing, to possibly even be home every night with the family. So just a lot of opportunity. And Kim, I just thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all of that with us. So I'm going to first ask Hillary, closing comments.
Yeah, I was going to actually, maybe Kim can help me. I don't want to put you on the spot, Kim, but something that I just came to mind was, what do you think is important about knowing about the WASP and other early female aviators. You know, we had Carol Hobson on. We were talking about Bessie Coleman, who is an African-American woman pilot in the 1920s, stunt woman. You know, before the WASP, maybe an inspiration to many WASP. Why is it important that we know this history? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I do. And then speaking from my own personal experiences, you know, like I said, I learned about the WASP a little bit later. But aviation, you know, it's so interesting because we're very prideful people. It's our hobby that turns into our passion that we also get paid to do, and we have this fruitful career, hopefully. And a lot of the times we take it personal, you know. It's different for people who may work in an office or have more of a conventional career to not have that pride. But when you learn about women who really sacrificed a lot, you know, sacrificed their families, you know, I was reading stories about women who asked their families for $500, and at the time, that's such a large amount of money to get their license, to then start this endeavor, you know, risking so much, to then only have another group of men tell you that you can't do it, and they still did. I mean, for me, the sense of pride I have to hold the title as a pilot is enormous because of them. And I think that's something that, like I said, is so unique about this industry and this career path, that we get to be so grateful to have this emotion backed up by it. And it gives our jobs and our day-to-day routines a lot more purpose. And it's, in my opinion, extremely fulfilling.
That's great. I couldn't have closed better. And with that, you know, our goal is to create a incredibly thrilling, narrative feeling documentary. This is not going to be a boring, you know, put the kids to sleep documentary. We're thinking about the young kids that are, you know, YouTube savvy on their phones in between classes. So that's partly one of the reasons why our documentaries, you know, it's taking longer maybe than some of our fans would like, but we're gonna get something really great out, I promise. And it's intended to have a huge theatrical release, and then, like I said, also come back into the classrooms and be incorporated into lesson plans. We are raising funds for finishing funds. We are in post-production, very exciting. Post takes a long time. You can go back to our first interview with Jill and Mattia and Molly. We get into it a little bit, but please consider sharing our page, sharing our campaign. We'll put the campaign link in the comments. If you work for an aviation corporation, please pass our info along to your marketing department. We reach 5 million people on Facebook every month. That is nothing to sneeze at. So we're looking for a corporate sponsor to get on board with these interviews so we can do more of them, get exposure on our social media, and then get exposure in our film. So my email is Hillary with 1 L at thereddoorfilms.film. We can put that into our notes too, but it's pretty easy to contact us. You can message us on Facebook too. So thank you, Jill, and thank you so much, Kim.
Thank you so much, Hillary and Kim both. And for those of you also, if you don't get the newsletter, you might want to. You can contact Hillary as well, or put a note on Facebook to get our newsletter. The newsletter is
they can actually join on Facebook. Actually, Jill, on our Facebook page, there's a little tab that says join. Yeah, join our newsletter. Yeah, but if you're not on Facebook, email us. Some people are listening to this and they're not on
this
Facebook.
Is true. Maybe, this is true. Thank you for pointing that out. And the newsletter is where we first announced this entire series and all of the amazing guests we have. So they're all available to watch after the fact as well on Facebook, so you can share them. And the first one we did, as we've mentioned before, is I interviewed Hillary, Mattia, and Molly about they're the 3 producers, directors of the film, about the documentary. Last week, we interviewed Carol Hobson, who is a pilot for United Airlines, who made a career switch after 20 years in journalism and as a corporate executive. So she has an amazing story. As Hillary mentioned, she just wrote a book called A Pair of Wings, which is a historical fiction novel based on the life of the incredibly inspiring Bessie Coleman. Today, talking with Kim Kissh, representing corporate aviation. Next week on Thursday, so on the 23rd, we're going to have our last interview of this series, where we are going to be talking to another dear friend of mine, Jacqueline Nichols, who is a Marine Corps pilot. She started out active duty Marine Corps flying helicopters and then switched to fixed wing aircraft and transitioned, I believe, 2 years ago, year and a half ago, to the Marine Corps Reserves. She's a rock star, and we're going to be chatting with her about life as a woman in the military pilot world next Thursday, same time as today, 11 a.m. Pacific time. So thank you all for joining. If we didn't get to your question on Facebook, we will answer it online. And that's it for today. Have a great day.
I can't thank you enough, Jill and Kim. Truly, you're amazing. So
Thanks, Hillary. Bye, everyone.
Next time. See you.